I'd like to sponsor the Shmuz. My wife and I would like to sponsor the Shmuz in honor of my daughter's upcoming wedding. May the young couple be zocha to build a bayis neman v'Yisrael. Vayera el Avram el Yitzchak el Yaakov v'kel shakai u'shmi Hashem lo nadasi lahem. Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, I appeared to Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov with the name Kel Shakai, one of the names of Hashem, which demonstrates a certain element of Hashem's showing Himself in the world. Ushmi Hashem lo nadati lehem, but the name Hashem I did not reveal to them. They knew me as Kel Shakai, they did not know me as Hashem. Now the names of Hashem are very, very important because they reveal to us the manifestation that Hashem shows in this world. Hashem exhibits Himself kaviyachol in different ways. The name is particular because it defines the essence of the way that Hashem is revealing the character traits, the midos that Hashem is revealing. Hashem said to Moshe, you are going to have an opportunity that Avram and Yitzchak, Yaakov did not have. Because the name Hashem I did not reveal to them. Rashi explains, what is this mean? The name Hashem is Neman La'amez Devarai. I fulfill that which I promise. Kel Shakai is a certain power, but Hashem fulfills the promise. I promised them, I didn't quite fulfill it. I couldn't fulfill it, says Hashem. But you, Moshe, you're going to see me in a different light because I'm going to fulfill my word to you. But Rashi makes a very significant observation in the pasuk. Lohodati en kasiv kan. It didn't say I didn't tell them. Nowhere does the pasuk say I didn't tell them the name Hashem. Obviously, I told them that. They knew that was one of my character traits. Elolonadati, I was not revealed. Lo nikarti lehem, I wasn't recognized to them. Bemidas amitis shili, they didn't recognize me. Granted, they knew it. Granted, they understood that one of the midos of Hashem is that Hashem fulfills that which He promises, but they didn't experience it. They didn't recognize it. You, Moshe Rabbeinu, are given an opportunity that the Avos didn't have. Okay. Now, if we were to, in a very, very small, self-contained unit, define Hashem, we would probably use three criteria. Hashem is all-knowing, Hashem is all-present, and Hashem is all-powerful. If you get those three, you have enough that you're certainly not an apikoros, you're certainly in the geder, in the parameters of one who is a mamin. Now here's a very simple observation. There's another character trait with which Hashem runs the world. Hashem fulfills His word. Avram knew that, Yitzchak knew that, and Yaakov knew that. So what is Rashi telling us? Rashi is saying that Hashem says to Moshe, you have an opportunity that the Avos never had, because you're going to experience it. You're going to live it. I told it to, you're going to actually live it. I'd like to ask the following obvious question. What difference does it make? Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were very intelligent human beings. They understood very clearly that one of the midos of Hashem is that Hashem fulfills that which He says. So they didn't live through it. That doesn't mean they didn't understand it. You do not have to climb up a very tall building, jump off it, crash to the basement below to understand that it hurts when you fall from a high distance. You can know things without experiencing them. So why is it that Hashem says, you, Moshe, are given an opportunity that the others didn't have? You could experience my paying back. They couldn't. You're going to be zocha to see things, understand things, reach levels that they couldn't. It doesn't seem to make much sense. Knowledge is not limited to experience. Therefore, the Avos could have, should have known as much as Moshe. Yet Rashi is telling us here something very, very deep. So I'd like to see this evening if in fact we can better understand exactly what Rashi is telling us. And let me begin with the following observation. The single most difficult challenge to the human, in fact the one most guaranteed impossible challenge to the human, is to understand God. By definition, Hashem is incomprehensible to the mortal, limited human mind. By definition, Hashem has no beginning and no end. We mortals cannot fathom that. There never was a beginning to Hashem. There never will be an end to Hashem. Hashem fills every particle of physicality, but is limited by nothing. He is all over, but can't be seen anywhere. Hashem is boundless, limitless. Any definition of Hashem, any accolade that you give to Hashem is limiting and by definition incorrect. Hashem is clearly beyond the human capacity to relate to in any sense, understand in any way, and the best we can come to is a false misunderstanding of Hashem, because Hashem is so beyond the human capacity to understand that it is literally impossible for the human to do. However, we have two separate mitzvahs asayis and maybe a third that circles around this very particular point. There is a mitzvah asay that we state twice a day in Shema, Ve'ahavata es Hashem Elokecha. We're obligated to love Hashem. If you don't know Hashem, you can't love Hashem. We're obligated to fear Hashem. Ve'aresa me'elokecha. We're obligated to fear Hashem. If you don't know Hashem, you cannot fear Hashem. And we're obligated to serve Hashem. And serve doesn't just mean do the mitzvahs. Serve means with all of your heart. And again, these mitzvahs are predicated upon an understanding of God. Yet again, the problem is, how do we human beings do that when it's so beyond any physical capacity of the human? And I'd like to share with you something that the Mesil Shem says as a basic. He explains as follows. The job of the Jew is not to understand Hashem. The job of the person is not to try to fathom deeply into God and God's nature and how God runs the world. Rather, he says, our job is very different. Our job is to break all of the mechitzos hamafsikos, all of the heavy cloaks of physicality that interrupt between me and Hashem. And if I could break through these bonds, if I could get past these limiting cloaks of physicality, intuitively, instinctively, I would be drawn to Hashem like an iron to a powerful magnet. The reason for this is that I am comprised of two components. There's a nefesh abahami within me, physical desires, base needs, and there's also a seichel, a pure neshama. And the neshama with which I was created intuitively, instinctively knows Hashem. The neshama is limitless, boundless, and the neshama lives on long after the guf dies. The neshama relates 100% to Hashem, because the neshama is from the same ilk on a much dimuted level, but of the same sort of similar type, and the neshama yearns for a relationship with Hashem. If I could stop the pull of physicality, if I could stop my guf from interrupting, then my neshama, that part of me, will be drawn to Hashem, pulled to Hashem. I'll sense Hashem's presence clearly. I'll fear Hashem in the sense of the awe, the magnitude, and I'll love Hashem with a passionate, powerful love. The work that we do, all of the work, all of the mitzvahs, focuses on making me more spiritual, stopping the mechitzos, the boundaries, the cloak of physicality, interrupting it so my pure neshama can reach out, I can relate to, be pulled after Hashem like that piece of iron to the magnet. Now, with that being said, I'd like to share with you that there are 5 levels to Yiras Hachet. 5 levels to this concept of Yura, and I think each one of them, when we touch on them and we see the progression of them, we'll understand the human, and that's you and I, with a much greater clarity. Let me begin. And the very first level of Yura is pure Yiras Hachet. If you'd like to understand Yiras Hachet, all you have to do is pass one of those signs that says electronic fence. Now, I don't really trust in them, because if there's a Doberman pincher in that yard over there and there's electronic fence, I still walk on the other side of the street, because I'm not a big fan of modern technology. I believe deeply in base instincts, and I'm not 100% convinced that a German Shepherd or a different attack dog is going to be prevented and held back when he's really enraged. However, generally they work. An electronic fence is a rather simple device, A collar is placed around the dog's neck. There's a base transmitter somewhere in the house or wherever it may be that puts out a signal. That signal creates an artificial fence. There's a distance, whether it's 30 feet, 50 feet, whatever the end of the distance is, as long as the dog stays within those parameters, it's happy, it does what it wants. The minute it passes that certain line, an electronic shock goes off. It's known, it's taught where the line is. That electronic fence keeps it within a very particular boundary. Again, how much you rely on it depends on how much bitachon you have in modern technology, but it definitely works if you're the pet owner and you don't want your pet running into the street, etc. Okay. If you'd like to understand the basic level of Yura Sachet, I think that's a very good parable. It's a very simple system. Knowing and understanding that for every action that I do, there will be recourse. For every positive action, I'll be rewarded. For every negative action, I'll be punished. I'm wearing an electronic collar, and every single action that I engage in, every thought, every dibur, is weighed, measured, and I will be rewarded or punished. Very simple. So you may say, why is it that we ever sin? Why is it that we're not constantly doing mitzvahs all the time? The dog stays exactly where it should. Why is it that the human tends to stray? The answer is because if we literally had electronic collars around our neck, there would be no bechira. If every time a human being sinned, he would get zapped min hashamayim, there'd be no growth, no challenge, no free will, and no reason to exist. You see, Hashem complicated the issues a bit. What happens is, there's nothing immediately that happens to me when I eat the pork sandwich, when I drive my car on Shabbos. There's no zap, there's no lightning bolt, there's no tss sound. And therefore, there is a major challenge. You see, there's a full half of my personality that deny the existence of this electronic collar. There's a full half of me that says there never will be a day of reckoning. There is no such concept as reward and punishment, besides which I'll be forever young. The current state will never change. My nefesh abahami, fully 50% of the I, screams out, there is no reward, no punishment. The behema can only see that which is goloi umiyad, that which is revealed and immediate, and punishments well off in the future it cannot see. The real system of schar v'onish is not in this world. Make no mistake. A tzaddik will have a much better life than will a rasha. Number one, he's satisfied, he's happy. Number two, Hashem takes care of him. But that's not the reward and punishment. Schar mitzvah b'hayal maleka, the real reward for mitzvahs is not in this world. Hashem will grant a tzaddik a better life because it's a good investment, so to speak. If the tzaddik has money, health, well-being, he'll better serve Hashem. So Hashem will give him a better life. But the actual reward is in the world to come. That's vastly, vastly far away. The behemoth side of me can't see it. There's no visible electronic collar. And the entire work in the first level of Yura Sachet is understanding that every action that I engage in, I will answer for the good or for the bad. There is an electronic collar. It's on me, but the punishment or rewards are way, way into the future, and it requires an awful lot of work to make that real, to make that palpable, to make that something that I really feel so that it changes my behavior. That is the first level of Yura Sachet. There's a second level of Yura. The second level of Yura is best described by something that I've mentioned before, but I believe bears repeating. I had a friend of mine in yeshiva who, his father was in chinuch, and he was a student of martial arts. He began, I think, in the 6th grade studying, and he was very diligent, very focused. And where he was, he started learning a particular style of karate. He learned the kicks, the punches, the stances. As it turned out, his parents moved, so he was there for 1 year, and he moved to another city. The only karate school in that other city was a different style. So he had to begin again. In the first style, he had reached the rank of yellow belt, but now in the new city, he had to start again. So now he began again, new stances, new kicks, new punches, and he also excelled very diligently. After a year, he got his yellow belt in the second style. As it worked out, he went to high school in a different city. Well, the city he was in, the only karate school, was also a third style. He had to begin again from the beginning. Again, new stances, new kicks, new punches. He advanced. He reached again a yellow belt in the third style. By the time he went into 10th grade, he switched yeshivas. By the end of his karate career, he had achieved the rank of yellow belt in 5 styles. A rank beginner. But he was diligent, very, very focused, and worked very, very hard. Had he spent the same amount of energy in one style, he would have been a black belt. Instead of being a rank beginner, he would have been a master. But because he was in this style, and that style, he attained the grand rank of yellow belt in 5 styles. And I think that that is a rather apt mushal for our lives. Every human being understands that you cannot take it with you. You could be very wealthy on this planet. You could have a tremendous amount of honor. You could live in a palatial manner and drive the fanciest cars, but when you're dead, it doesn't matter a key who's there. And not just that, every thinking person understands that which the Shalom shares with us, and that is the rank in the world to come is only given out based on one criteria: how hard did you work? Not on your God-given talent, not on how smart you are, but based on the abilities and talents that were given to you, how much did you accomplish? That's the sole criteria, and each one of us will be pegged, each one of us will be in a different position based on that one single criteria. How far did we go with the talents, the abilities that Hashem gave us? The reason that most people never quite accomplish their potential is because they end up becoming yellow belt in 5 styles. When they're young, they're a kid, all of their energy, all of the focus goes on playing basketball. That's where it's at. Playing ball, that's really what matters. When they get a little older, maybe their focus changes to being the most popular kid in the class. They get a little bit older and they spend all of their energy on the newfound thing called grades in school. Maybe they'll get a little bit older and they'll focus on their career. They spend all of their energy, all of their focus, everything on getting into the right college, getting into the right MBA program. They graduate and now all of their focus is on making more money. The focus then becomes a 401k. Then the focus becomes which nursing home I'll be in. And they spend their life changing from focus to focus to focus, a yellow belt in 5 styles. What the Mesilas Yesharim tells us in very clear terms is we were put on the planet for one purpose: to grow, to accomplish. At the end of my day, I will be ranked, but not based on money, not based on awards, based on one single criteria: how far did I go, how much did I accomplish, how much of a mensch did I make myself into, how much Torah did I learn, how well did I daven, how much of a Yura Shemayim did I make myself into, and my position will be exactly pegged based on that. Many, many people will be far greater than I, many, many people below, but the only criteria is how much effort, how much energy you put into that. And when a person understands that clearly, visually, right in front of their eyes, they reach the second level of Yura. It's a level of Yura because the behemoth screams out, it's false. I will never die. If I'm now 22, I will be 22 forever. I'll always be young and healthy, and the concept of the world to come cannot exist. Because in the world of the behemoth, in the world of the animal soul, there is nothing other than instincts, desires, the physical world. Anything spiritual can't exist, and the current situation will never change. Hence, many, many people end up being a yellow belt in 5 styles because their life brings them to different realizations. They work very diligently at that new realization, very diligently at the new one when that one changes. But the key to success in life is to understand I'm put on the planet for a reason. My measure in the world to come for eternity will be based on that reason. How hard I work, how much I focus on it, is the amount of honor, respect, and cover that I'll have for eternity based on what I made myself into. It requires an awful lot of work to get that level of Yura. Why? Because again, a full half of my personality denies it, and it's very much based on the future and very far away. But that is a second level of Yura, understanding that who I am for eternity is based on what I accomplish, what I do here. But there's a third level of Yura. And before we touch on the third level of Yura, let me make one simple observation. Level 1 is understanding that every action I do has a recourse I answer for. Level 2 is understanding that my level in the world to come is based on what I do. Do you notice that in level 1 and level 2, there's not a mention of Hashem? God isn't relevant in those two levels of Yura. You see, those levels of Yura are very, very basic. Very, very tangible, solid. It's not dependent upon my relationship to Hashem. It's not based on that. Obviously, that's ultimately the goal. But the levels of Yira do not need Hashem to be in my mind's eye when I'm working on them. They're on some level not dependent on that. But level 3 is a much, much higher level of Yira. That's already a level of Yiras Shamayim, where Hashem ventures into the picture, where Hashem is already part of my reality. And the best way that I could be Messiah, the third level, is the following. I was in Atlantic City a couple of years back, and there was a convention that I was attending, and they particularly, this is very well plotted out, the only way to get to the convention is to walk straight through the casino, because what they're hoping is that you will spend your time and money along the way. In any case, that wasn't where I was spending my time and money, but I did have some time before I was supposed to be where I was supposed to be. And I noticed there was a fellow, one of the gentlemen working there at the blackjack table, one of the tables, I'm not really familiar, and no one was at the table. So I do like to find out about the world. So I sort of walked over there and began speaking to him. And I sort of mentioned, it's kind of almost sad. Look at these people spending money that they can't even dream of paying back. And we got into a long conversation about what was going on. And my interest was to get his perspective on people destroying their lives through gambling. And it was a very interesting conversation. And I found it very eye-opening and very open. And it lasted a while. After the 20 minutes or longer that the conversation took, just as an act of gesture, I wanted to thank him. So I sort of raised my hand, thank you. And when I raised my hand like this, I thought he was bitten by a snake. He jumped back. I was like, I apologize, I'm sorry, I just wanted... He said, the eye in the sky. And then he explained to me, one of the great fears of the house is that people who are dealing are going to pass chips to customers. A $500 chip, a $1,000 chip. And the way you pass a chip is by handshaking. The eye in the sky is watching all activity. If he shakes a hand, he could lose his job. When I put out my hand, he jumped back like he was bit by a snake because his job was on the line, because he was being watched. The eye in the sky. And that, my friends, is the third level of Yira. Knowing and understanding that from a distance, from up in Shemayim, Hashem is watching. Every action, every conversation, everything that I do, Hashem is watching from a distance, from above. There's an eye in the sky. And that's something that is a level well beyond level 1 and level 2. Because it requires identifying something beyond every human experience. And you see, before in my life, I've fallen and smashed my foot. So I can understand pain. I can understand that if I eat a cheeseburger, Hashem is going to punish me, and I will feel pain because of that, because that's something I relate to. But you see, there's nothing in my human experience that relates to or talks to me about Hashem. Hashem is boundless, limitless, and beyond all physicality, and every particle of my being Every particle of my nefesh bahami screams out, there is no Hashem. And every experience that I've ever had denies Hashem. And therefore it's very, very difficult for me to reach the third level and to understand that someone is watching, someone is there, someone is constantly observing me. And I dare say, as an observation, if you've ever had a dog, you know that if you feed the dog, give the dog water, take care of the dog will build a very real loyalty to you. The dog will be attached to you. It'll come in, you could train it to bring your slippers, you could train it to be a very, very loyal pet. But I want you to imagine for a minute the following. Imagine that you got a brand new puppy, and you put it in a room, and each night while it was sleeping, you brought it water and food, but you never allowed the puppy to see you. You put the water there, you put the food there, you made sure the cage was warm and dry, and everything was proper, but the dog never saw you, and it grew up. And at the age of 2 years old, you appeared to the puppy, and you said, "Hi dog, I'm your master." What do you think the level of attachment that dog would have to you? It wouldn't know you from any other occupant of the planet, because it didn't see you. If you feed the dog, it understands that you're its master. If you take care of the dog, it builds a loyalty. But the dog cannot relate to something that's not right there, that's not golui umiyad, not revealed, not present. And therefore it's very, very difficult for us human beings to understand that Hashem is A, watching, B, involved in my life. And it takes an awful lot of stepping out of my current reality to understand that the food put there is put there by my master. Understanding that there's a master to this universe. But after a while, when it's just sort of things kind of work out that way, things just happen to work out. I get the right job, and I meet the right person, and I marry the right person, and I have children, and it's just a whole string of constant coincidences. It just always seems to be there. If the human being works on it, the human being can understand that there is a master running the ship. There's a master who's laying out each step. And even though I can't see it, even though my nefesh bahami screams it's not there, there's a part of me that could identify, understand, and relate to Hashem from a distance running my life. And that is the third level of Yura, where Hashem is already introduced and I already develop a certain relationship. I could appreciate that which Hashem does for me. I could recognize the chesed. I could thank Hashem. I could understand that Hashem takes care of me. Maybe even understand that Hashem loves me. Certainly understand the benefits that Hashem gives to me. And therefore on some level I develop a certain sense of ahava, of yira, or in the sense that if Hashem is watching me and constantly taking care of me, there's a majesty, there's a might, there's a power, a presence to Hashem. And I have a very different sense. I'm now in the category of one who is being yorei shamayim, fearing Hashem, loving Hashem. However, there's a fourth level to Yura. There's a fourth level to Yura, and the best way I could really be mitzayah this is by an interesting technology which has developed of recent times. Most fire departments now have something called thermal imaging goggles. And it's a fantastic device. You see, there are two killers in a fire. There's the heat, but as equal to the heat is the smoke. And if firemen go into a burning building, they could have all the best apparatus in the world. They could have goggles and breathing tanks, and they can walk into smoke that would kill any other human. But how do you find the child hiding under the bed? The smoke is so thick. It's so cloudy, there's no visibility. You can see not even your hand right here in front of your goggles. So how do you find the survivors in this mess? These goggles, thermal imaging goggles, are something that's placed over the standard goggle, and they're sensitive to heat. But they're so sensitive to heat that they can detect a part of the building that's much hotter than the other. They could detect a part of the building that's cooler. And when the goggles are focused on the bed, If there's a child hiding under it, his body temperature is 98.6, the bed might be 60 degrees. There's an image of the child that's brought out. The fireman sees the outline of the child, rushes under the bed, grabs the child, takes him out to safety. It's a fantastic innovation. But you see, here's the ironic part of it. You have to shut off your vision. You cannot use your eyes. It's black, thick smoke. And if you rely on your eyes, if you trust your eyes, you're blind as a bat. When you put these goggles on, you're viewing things in a vastly different manner. You're viewing the thermal image, the heat that's translated, and you're fully aware that the child is there. If you lift it up, you're blind again, but you put them on, you see the child in a different vantage point. You see the image. I believe that's an apt mushal for the fourth level of Yura. There are times when you close your eyes in a Shemona Esrei and you're visibly, palpably, fully aware of Hashem's presence. Not way, way up there in Shemayim, not from a distance, but right here, present. I speaking to my Creator, right here. Hashem fills every particle of physicality. Mole kol ha'olam kulo ne'um Hashem. Hashem fills the presence of everything. And Hashem is right here. The problem is the behemoth side of me denies it. Chai v'kayam. The behemoth side of me screams out, it can't be. But if I put on my goggles, if I shut off my physical senses, but allow my neshama to be hypersensitive, I could sense the presence of Hashem, I could relate to Hashem, and I could speak to Hashem right here. And that is the fourth level of Yura, where it's not that Hashem watching from a distance, but Hashem right here in my life. 24/7, 365, as I open my eyes in the morning, as I close them at night, as I walk up the stairs, as I walk down the stairs, as I get in my car to drive, Hashem present right here. And my behemoth screams out, it's not true, but if I close my eyes and attune my sense, attune myself to the presence of Hashem, I can feel Hashem, I can know Hashem, and I'm reaching to a much greater level of Yira, a much greater level of Avas Hashem, because I'm aware. Not from far, far away in a distance, but I feel Hashem's presence right here. And when you reach a certain point in that Shemona Esrei, when you really feel Hashem's presence, it's a very different sense of awe that you have. However, there's a fifth level of Yura. There's a fifth level of Yura that goes well, well beyond any of these. And the best way I can illustrate the fifth level of Yura is something that Rabbi Dvidovitz or Shiva Ratchas had just told me this Shabbos. He told me that on Yom Kippur, in the Chazon Ish's Beis Medrash, the Chazon Ish had begun the Musaf Shemona Esrei, and he was davening that Shemona Esrei. Someone in the crowd, someone in the Beis Medrash, passed out. And it was a Shiloh of Pikuach Nefesh. A human life, a Jew's life was in danger. Someone, recognizing the seriousness of the situation, went over to the Chazon Ish and had to ask, what do we do? So he walked over to the Chazon Ish knowing that this was Yom Kippur, knowing that he's in the middle of Shemona Esrei, but it's the right thing to do. And he walked over and he whispered in the Chazon Ish's ear to ask him the question. No response. Jew's life. And he again whispers into the Chazon Ish, as a person who passed out, what do we do, Rebbe, what do we do? No response. He spoke. He said it in a voice. There's a Jew who passed out. What do we do? No response. He screamed. There's a Jew who passed out. No response. Finally recognizing the fact that it's very, very serious, he grabbed the Chazon Ish by the shoulders and shook him. And the Chazon Ish went, what? What? He asked the Shiloh and the Chazon Ish told him what to do. And I'd like to define what that moment really was. And there's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch, Tzadik Ches, in halacha in Shulchan Aruch that says in that siman that when you daven, the ultimate level of davening is called hispashtus hagashmius, when you shed physicality, when you so almost leave this current existence that your body no longer holds you, no longer contains you. You almost, in a sense, go up to Shemayim. I'd like to answer for you a question which I'm sure you've asked or have heard asked. The Mishnah in Brachos tells us that the Hasidim Arishonim would prepare themselves for an hour, daven for an hour, and then delay for an hour afterwards. Everyone understands why the Hasidim Arishonim would take an hour before they daven, because to reach a level of really recognizing that Hashem is present, to reach a level of His pashtus agashmius, shedding the physicality, reaching a level of perception that I literally am speaking to Hashem right here, requires a lot of preparation. And if you've reached that level where you're literally speaking to Hashem right there, it's obvious why your Shemona Esrei is going to take an hour. Because there's an awful lot to say, an awful lot to gain from that experience. But the question is, why did they take an hour afterwards? And the Nefesh HaChaim explains, Beis Yud Dalet explains why they took an hour after. He says, because there's such an awesomeness of that moment, such a powerful physical pleasure, such a sublime, above human experience that they couldn't break away. The greatest pleasure that a human being can ever experience on this planet is dveikus. When the body no longer contains me, when I'm not limited, I'm not blocked, and I literally cling to my Creator, I experience Hashem's presence, and I feel the greatest pleasure that a human being ever can. Who wants to leave it? They would take an hour because they didn't want to come back to this existence. And when the Chazon Ish was in that state, he was in a different world. It wasn't even an issue that he understood that Hashem was present. He left. He went to some other dimension because he stopped the block of physicality. He shed the heavy cloak of his body, and he literally experienced Hashem in a level that's very different. And that is the fifth level of Yura, where a person really understands Hashem's presence. Two quick observations. The behema, the physical side of me, can sense no Yira. The physical side of me doesn't recognize anything spiritual, doesn't recognize anything beyond the here and now, therefore can never love Hashem, therefore can never fear Hashem. However, the next step is very critical to understand. Any minute amount of knowledge of Hashem perforce causes you to love Hashem, and perforce causes you to fear Hashem. And I'll explain to you why. You see, the only way you could know Hashem is by eradicating the effect of physicality, eradicating the effect of the behema. The way you know Hashem is by allowing that part of me that intuitively, instinctively knows that Hashem is present to come to the fore. And when I do that, I have a different sense of reality. I see Hashem, and I relate to Hashem, and I have such an ava. Hashem is the most beautiful and most illustrious, the thing that a human desires more than anything. And I have an awesome sense of Yira because of the presence of Hashem. The more a person knows Hashem, automatically the more they fear Hashem. And it is impossible to know Hashem and not fear Hashem. You can know about Hashem. You could write books about God. But you cannot know Hashem without fearing Hashem, because knowing Hashem by definition means shedding the heavy cloak of physicality, relating to Hashem. The minute you relate to Hashem in a real sense, automatically you love Hashem, automatically you fear Hashem. And those are the two mitzvahs of Ava and Yira. And all of our avoda, everything we were put on this planet to do, everything we focus on, is shedding those heavy bonds of physicality, allowing that part of me that instinctively, intuitively fears Hashem to fear Hashem. Would you like to know what Yira is? Read the stories of the people who lived through 9/11. Read the story of a fellow who sees the Twin Towers coming down, the rubble, the powerful clouds of smoke. He has a laptop on his back and he starts running. He starts running and running, and he crosses the Brooklyn Bridge, and he runs for 3 hours without knowing where he's going. There is a moment in a person's life when they see things in such a vastly different way that their gripped by an otherworld fear, I'd like to share with you one thought. On Rosh Hashanah, or maybe on Yom Kippur, if you ever get a real eye glimpse at some minute amount of Yura Shamayim, I guarantee that you're going to have the following Hargasha. You're going to want to jump under the table and hide. Not because God's mean, not because God's got a big stick and He's going to punish me, beat me over the head, because the presence of Hashem is here. The great master creator of the heavens and the earth is right here, and you want to run under the table and hide because of the trepidation that you feel. And if you don't feel it, you don't know Hashem. If you don't feel it, you don't know Hashem is here. And the more that you know Hashem, the more that you feel it, the more aware you are of Hashem's presence, the more you feel Yura, and hand in hand, the more you feel a powerful drive to be close, to cling, to be davik to Hashem, because you see the beauty, you recognize the majesty, the glory of Hashem, and all you want to do is be close to your Creator. How does one do this? How does one shed the heavy cloak of physicality? There are 5 levels to Yura. All of them apply to us. Mostly the first, maybe the second. The third, being aware that Hashem, at least in the distance, is watching us, is also Nageya. And maybe even the fourth. Every once in a while we could recognize that I'm literally speaking to Hashem. As I've mentioned before, that's Mesilas Yesharim's description of tefillah. Having a conversation with Hashem. Just like I'm speaking to my friend, he may respond, he may not. That's what he defines as tefillah. Each one of those levels is Nageya. I don't know if we'll ever really get to the 5th level, but maybe we'll get eye glimpses, we'll get understandings. But all of them in some sense are applicable to us. And the question is, how do we reach those levels? How do we work on it? What's the system? What's the way to do it? And my friends, this really is the essence of our religion. It's the essence of our life. If you're ready, but you have to be ready to actually wake up and understand life, this is the core critical question. And there are 2 techniques. The first is very, very difficult, and the second is very, very easy, and you have to use both. The first technique is what we call Madrega-based. Madrega-based means, quite simply, the more you learn, the more you daven, the more you work on your midos, the more the balance changes. You see, your behema becomes weaker and weaker. The seichel, your neshama, becomes stronger and stronger. You become, instead of 50-50, you become 60-40, 70-30, 80-20. You reach a point where your seichel is so strong that you experience Hashem right there. Because your seichel has been nisgaber, it's won out. The behema is weaker, and therefore you're able to sense Hashem. Level 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5. You're beginning to change the essence of you. And that takes years and years and years of work. However, it's essential. The second way is a shortcut. In the Igeres Musar, Rabbi Yisrael Salanta shares with us the secret. He says, if you'd like the secret to how to jump madregas, how to jump levels, how to perceive Hashem in a way that you're not really ready for, he says, use your emotions. Use those powerful forces of Hargasha, of feelings, because those will catapult you. I'll explain to you what he's saying. If you ever get angry, furious, red, angry, you have a very different sense of reality. I think differently, I feel differently, and I'm currently in a different place. So too, when the doctor says to you, son, I have some very bad news for you, and it's incurable, you have a very different emotional sense at that moment. At that moment you get it. I am vulnerable. I am mortal. I cannot will myself into existence, and I cannot cure myself. I am a creation, and I'm dependent upon my Creator. And when you feel that, When you feel that reality, you're now in a different place. Because now you experience Hashem, now you're aware of your relationship, now you recognize that Hashem is the creator and Manhig, the one who runs the world, and in that moment you can jump madregas, because in that moment you see Hashem, you recognize Hashem, and you could catapult yourself. One of the great secrets to growth, says Rabbi Yisrael, is to use your emotions. Sometimes there'll be very, very bad events that happen, sometimes very great events, but when you feel something, whether it's happy or sad, you're in a different place, use that emotion, use that to catapult you to a new level, and if you do that often enough, you acquire that level. You grow in Yura, you grow in Ava, you change the essence of you. Both systems have to be used. And I believe that that's exactly the answer to the question what Rashi is saying. You see, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov did not experience Hashem in the following way. Hashem promised them, but Hashem never delivered that. Moshe Rabbeinu was being given the opportunity that they didn't have. Hashem was going to show him the delivery. And when you live through the delivery, there's a different experience, a different emotionality. You see the salvation, you say Hallel. When the Klal Yisrael sung Shira Alayam, it was an emotional high that catapulted them well above their madrega. They saw the Yeshua, they screamed out, Hashem, thank you. And that emotion allowed them to sense Hashem, relate to Hashem, feel Hashem to an extent that the Avos didn't, because the Avos never had that experience. Says Rashi, they knew Hashem, but they didn't experience Hashem. And if you don't experience Hashem, you don't really know Hashem. You don't have the resulting Ava. You don't have the resulting Yura. Moshe Rabbeinu, you're being given an opportunity that the others didn't have. And I think this Yesod is a very, very critical one to success in life. Because at the end of the day, Madrega growth is very, very difficult. To set up another Seder, to really learn another 5 minutes or even 10 minutes, to work on my midos, to work on davening, to work on being a mensch, requires an awful lot of dedication, and the growth is very slow. But the second system of using your emotions, catapulting yourself in that moment when you feel something different, you recognize Hashem, and locking that in is a powerful shortcut that allows you to jump madrega, and if you use it often enough, whether it be for the bad, whether it be for the good, you grow and you grow, you sense Hashem's presence, you're aware of Hashem's presence. Initially it's level 1 where you just understand that there's punishment and reward. Eventually it gets to a higher level. Eventually you get to see that Hashem from a distance is watching. Even more than at a certain point you get to understand that Hashem is right there. I'm very sensitive to not using this podium for political or personal gain. However, I would like to take one liberty. When you're young, you make the assumption that, of course, I'm going to get married. Question, I'll find my bashar, no question about it. But as you get on in life a bit, you find that it doesn't always work out that way. But you get married. And then you make the assumption that everyone assumes, of course, now that I'm married, of course I'll have children. It's a given. Maybe a question of quite how many, but it's a given. But then again, you look around and you see that not everybody has children. And then even when you recognize that you've had children and you've been blessed, you then recognize the next step. Everyone assumes that my children, they're going to be great. They're going to go in the way of their father and mother. They're going to go in the way of Derech HaTorah. They're going to give me such nachas. Every father has a dream, and you look around and you quickly see it doesn't always pan out that way. And even if you're zocha, that your child taka goes in the path, really is a credit, and somebody gives you nachas, you next make the assumption that they're going to find their bashert in the right time. And again, you find it's not so simple. And I find myself in a very interesting position. Every one of those steps has been delivered to me. And I'd like to use this podium and this opportunity to make a public declaration of my Hakaras HaTov in the name of my wife and myself to our Creator, the one who made us, who runs this world, who brought us to this point where we're now, Mitzvah Shem, going to bring our daughter to the chuppah. And none of those steps can be or should be taken for granted, because they're not. And the reality is that when a Jew experiences a milestone in their life, the only thing that is wise to do is to lock it in, and to recognize exactly all the intricacies of Hashem's involvement, to recognize all the steps that had to come into being, and to, with a full voice, sing out the praise of Hashem, recognize a tremendous hakaras hatov, and use that moment to thank Hashem and appreciate that which He's been given. And again, in the name of my wife and myself, we'd like to do just that, to thank Hashem and recognize this tremendous gift of being able to bring one of our children to the chuppah. I think there's a tremendous lesson to learn from this Rashi. 5 levels to Yura. The first is very, very difficult. The next time you stub your toe and you say, ouch, use that. Don't waste that opportunity. Use that and say, Mr. Behema, did you like that feeling? Did it feel good to you? Well, I have some news for you. We're in this together. And if I continue doing what I'm doing, I'm going to feel a lot worse than stubbed toes and bruised shins. I'm going to feel pain that's powerful and searing. And the next time you feel pleasure, the next time you enjoy a moment, say, Mr. Behema, wake up. Don't you feel that pleasure? There's a world to come that lasts for eternity. I will enjoy there forever exactly what I've accomplished. And the next time you get dissed, the next time when your buddy gets the promotion and you don't, when he gets the corner office and becomes your boss, and you feel this anger, this jealousy, say to yourself, Nar, this is a temporary world, it's so foolish, it's so passing. Don't I get it? Those guys sitting next to me in shul are going to steig, they're going to grow, they're going to tower over me in the world to come. What's wrong with me? Those guys who I went to yeshiva with are growing and accomplishing. They're going to be sterling, powerful giants, and I'm going to be a Lilliputian. And when you feel that, use it as an energy source, use it as a power. Because the first 2 levels of Yura, number 1, like that electronic collar, and just knowing that there's punishment. And level 2, understanding that my placement in the world to come is based solely on my effort, are very, very behema based. They're very tangible, and you have to use real Olam Hazeh type of examples to make it real to me. But it's level 3 that the real action starts at, because it's level 3 when God is introduced into the picture. You see, level 3 is understanding when those strange coincidences happen to turn out. And say to yourself, what's pshat? Stop lying. Stop telling me nonsense. What happened? How did it work out? How did it just happen to be that the right guy at the right time said the right line? How did it just happen to be this event happened, this event happened? What does it mean? It means that someone's running this world. There's a hand, there's a master, there's an eye in the sky. Think it through, work it through, feel it. And when you feel it, you begin to understand that Hashem is present at a distance, but watching and arranging for my food and my sustenance and the economy and my health and everything else. But you also have to feel the 4th level. The 4th level is when you put on your thermal goggles and you really sense Hashem's presence not up there in Shemayim, but right here. Maybe it'll only be on Rosh Hashanah. Maybe it will only be on Yom Kippur. But it could be on a Shabbos and it could be on a Tuesday evening, Shemona Esrei. If you shut out the world, shut out the physicality, and just speak to your Creator in your mother tongue. Speak to Hashem and ask and beseech and implore. And the best time to do it is when you're in deep, dire straits. When you really don't know how you're going to pay your mortgage. When you really don't know how you're going to pay your electric bill. And you turn to Hashem and you say, Hashem, help. And that reaching out is not up there in Shemayim. That reaching out is to Hashem right here. You have your thermal goggles on and you sense Hashem's presence. You catapult yourself. You jump madrigas and you reach a whole different level of understanding. And if you really, really work and you really, really engage the midah of simcha, of joy. And maybe it's only at your son's bar mitzvah, maybe it's at your daughter's wedding, when you're dancing, and you could at some level attain ispashtus, agashmias, shedding of physicality. You sense Hashem's presence, and it's a different experience. It's an experience of knowing Hashem is right there, but knowing the majesty, the glory, the awe, the essence of Hashem. And there's a powerful presence of Hashem, and you feel a trepidation that's mixed with a tremendous love, both emotions coexisting. As you sense this tremendous devekus and desire to be close, at the same sense you sense this Yura. You've reached a madrega that very few people reach, but that's what we're obligated in, and that's what every Jew can reach, if you work on it. Many people have asked the following question. Why daven in Cheshvan? If I accept that Hashem decrees who will live and who will die, if I accept that Hashem decrees how much money I am to make on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, why daven in Cheshvan? And I'd like to close this shmuz with an answer to that question. Previously, we've mentioned two other answers. The first answer is that's your shtadlus. Meaning to say, let's assume for a minute that Hashem decreed that I will make $100,000 this year. There is an assumption implied in that. And that is, that's the amount of money I will make, provided I do the correct ishtadlus. What is the correct ishtadlus is determined by me, the generation, the situation, various conditions, but at the end of the day, that amount of money is decreed provided that I do the proper ishtadlus. If I hear me'achrei pargud, Shafier, you're going to make $500,000 this year, and I say, great, I'm taking the year off, I'm sleeping till 12 o'clock, I'm going to go hungry. Because that amount of money is decreed provided that I do the correct ishtadlus. One of the things of ishtadlus that a Jew is obligated in is something called tefillah. Tefillah is part of the ishtadlus system and part of the obligation of a Jew to ask. That's part of the ishtadlus system. So therefore, even though I understand that the amount of money I'm to make is set on Rosh Hashanah, part of my normal actions is davening. It's part of what I have to do. There's a second reason why we daven in the middle of the year. And the second reason is because sometimes, although it's difficult, sometimes you could change the decree. If on the previous Rosh Hashanah it was decreed that you will no longer live this year, and you're given 6 more months and that's it, it is difficult, it is hard, but there are times when you can actually change the decree. And that's the second reason. And I'd like to present a third reason this evening, and part of the reason I'd like to present it is because I had the schus of hearing my future son-in-law speak this Shabbos, and he said over a vort that was powerful, powerful. Now my kids know, if they tell a story, if they submit an anecdote or a story to the shmuz and it's used, they get $5. And my kids line up, they take out books and they take out all kinds of articles because Abba, is this? If it's used, they get $5. This is something I've never done before. A chazal presented, probably worth $10. I don't know, I have to figure out afterwards what he gets for it. But he said over a chazal at the Shabbos table, I said, that's awesome. I have to use it. We'll have to discuss the momentous piece of it after. The Pasuk in Bereshit says, Hashem prepared everything. Hashem created the world, the stars, the moon, the sun, and man. But the Pasuk says, V'chol esev hasodeh terem yitzmach. All of the grass of the field before it grew, it was stagnant. Hashem created the trees, Hashem created the grass, and they were frozen in time. They remained exactly where they were. Because Hashem did not make it rain. They were created and frozen because the rain didn't begin. The entire cycle of growth had not begun. Why? Because man is not there to work the ground. Rashi explains on that pasuk, what does it mean? What does it mean? Man's not there to work the ground. Man is not there to recognize the good. Hashem created the trees, created the grass, froze it in time, waiting for man to come. Because only when man comes is it worth allowing the process of growth and decay to go on, because only then man is there to recognize the good. Therefore Hashem held back the rains until man came. But there's one more step that Rashi adds to that. Man recognized Tovosan v'yodei Shem tzarach l'olam. Man recognizes the good and understands that the rains are necessary for the world. V'hispalel aleihem, and davened for them. Hashem waited. Hashem created everything, held back the rain until man could recognize something is lacking from the world. Then man will ask for it. Then Hashem will bring it. My son-in-law, future son-in-law, asked the following question. I understand why Hashem froze everything in time. Because man has to be there to understand what rain has to do. Man has to be there to recognize the good. But why does man have to daven? Freeze the plants in creation. Wait till man is created. Once man is on the scene to recognize it, then Hashem should make it rain and everything should happen. Why does man have to recognize the need, then daven, then Hashem does it? And he said a fantastic answer, because only when man davens does he appreciate the good. And my friends, I'd like to share with you, I think it's a Devar Emes. Meaning to say as follows: there will be many times when you'll be granted much good in the year to come. You'll be standing on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and Hashem will say, you're zocha to tremendous good, success, well-being, everything. But it's incumbent upon you to recognize it, and oftentimes Hashem will hold that back until you ask. Why? Because until you ask, you don't recognize that it comes from Hashem. Until you ask, you don't recognize that it's all biyad Hashem, and therefore Hashem will suspend it, hold it in abeyance until you ask. Because it's only through that process of asking and then having it granted that we recognize that it's Hashem from a distance, Hashem from close, Hashem right there. And one of the great tools that we have to actually create a relationship with Hashem, fear Hashem, love Hashem, is a system called tefillah. Because when we're lacking and we request and our requests are granted, we get it. We wake up from our slumber, the behemoth has nothing to say. Mr. Behemoth, what's the answer? The doctor told you there was no cure. The economist told you it was all over. All odds told you it would never happen. Yet you asked, you requested, it was granted, and you succeeded again. Mr. Behemoth, what do you answer? The answer is there is no response. It's Hashem. When a person does that, they see the Yad Hashem, they recognize Hashem's presence, and they grow. Hashem grant us the wisdom, Hashem grant the Hashem couple Hatzlach and Bracha when we celebrate the next Simchas in Yerushalayim Habnuya.